How do we deal with apparent contradictions in the Bible?
So I would say a differentiation in detail doesn't necessarily amount to a contradiction. So I haven't found something that I think is an outright contradiction. That's not to say there aren't hard ones. So the death of Judas is a hard one because one gospel says
Which,
that he went and hung himself in the potter's field. The other says that he falls headlong and his entrails fall out. I think it's entirely possible to harmonize that and say he hung himself and
You guys
the
ask
rope
questions about
snapped
that?
and it fell and he like it's not, you can see how you could get these kind of things.
as we saw Wes Huff explain, Judas could easily have fit both of those accounts. So there isn't really a contradiction there. There's a story that's in three of the Gospels: Matthew, Mark, and Luke. It's found in Matthew 20:29 through 34, Mark 10:46 through 52, and Luke 18:35 through 43. In Matthew and Mark, we see that Jesus is leaving Jericho. And in Luke, we see that he is going to Jericho. And the contradiction is that these three stories all talk about a very similar healing. In Mark, it's two men that Jesus heals. And in Matthew and Luke, it's one man. And in Matthew, that man is named Bartimaeus. And so we see that these three stories are all very similar, but they have some key details that seem to be a contradiction. Again, in Matthew and Mark, Jesus is leaving Jericho, and in Luke, he is going to Jericho. And this one's actually fairly easy to solve. Today, in 2025, we have a lot of archaeological evidence about the area at the time, and what we see is there's actually two Jerichos. There's the one where the walls fell down in Joshua that we see in the Old Testament, and then they built a new city nearby, and standard practice at the time was to name it the same name. So there is an old and a new Jericho, and they were both along the path that Jesus was taking at the time. And so again, this is another example of something that seems like it's a contradiction, but in reality, you just look at the details and they don't actually contradict each other. They can all fit together, kind of like a puzzle. And like Wes Huff was explaining, there's differences between the Gospels because they all come from a slightly different perspective. There wouldn't need to be four different Gospels if they all said exactly the same things. Now, there would be a problem if they contradicted each other, but they don't.